I was 19 when I met Ethan. It was at a mutual friend's party, one of those crowded, too loud nights where everyone's pretending to have more fun than they actually are. I was standing awkwardly by the snack table, nursing a flat soda, when he walked up with that ridiculous smile of his and said, "You look like you're trying to telepathically escape. Mind if I join the mission?" I laughed. For real, that was rare back then. He had this energy like gravity of fun. He wasn't the kind of guy who begged for attention. He commanded it just by being there. Tall, sharp jawline, those soft hazel eyes that always looked like they were holding a secret. He started talking and just didn't stop. We stayed up until 3 a.m. that night, sitting on the back steps, talking about everything and nothing. Favorite movies, irrational fears, childhood dreams, the dumbest things we'd ever done. He asked me what I wanted to do with my life. I said, change the world, maybe. He said, let me know when you start, I'll follow. That night was the start of something I didn't realize would change everything. We started dating a week later. It was fast, too fast maybe, but it felt like we were invincible. He took me on midnight drives just to chase thunderstorms. He showed up outside my dorm once with a pizza and a handmade sign that said, "I miss your stupid face." I was cooked. He wasn't perfect, God no, like he made me feel seen. He made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't just floating through life anymore. My friends warned me, guys like that burn bright and burn out, they said. He's the type who leaves. But I didn't believe them. I couldn't. Ethan felt like home, messy, chaotic, but warm. We were together for 3 years. Through broken car engines, botched birthdays, his career struggles, my anxiety spirals, we held on. We weren't a fairy tale, but we were real. And real was enough for me. Then, it all shifted. It started small. He'd get tired faster than usual, skip dinner, fall asleep mid-conversation. I thought it was stress, maybe burnout. But then he fainted one night while we were watching TV. Just collapsed like a marionette whose strings had been cut. I remember screaming. The way his head hit the hardwood floor. The way his lips turned pale before the ambulance came. I thought he was dying. At the hospital, they ran tests for hours. Machines beeped. Nurses buzzed around. I sat in the hallway with my knees to my chest, praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. Finally, a doctor came out. His face was blank, too calm. Your boyfriend's kidneys are failing, he said, just like that. Stage 4 renal failure, rapid progression. They didn't know the exact cause, but they knew this. Without a transplant, Ethan wouldn't survive long. I stood at the edge of his hospital bed looking down at the man I loved, now hooked up to IVs and heart monitors. His skin looked gray, his voice barely a whisper. I don't want to die, he said. And in that moment, I felt something inside me snap into place. No matter what happened next, I was going to save him, even if it destroyed me. The days after Ethan's diagnosis were a blur. Endless hospital visits, test results, second opinions. I stopped going to class. I barely ate. I lived in that cold, sterile hospital room with him, watching the strongest man I knew crumble from the inside out. His skin turned pale. His body thinned out. He couldn't keep food down. He slept more and more each day, and when he was awake, he was scared. Not just of dying, but of leaving me behind. They said he needed a kidney transplant, and soon. His own were rapidly shutting down. Time is critical, the doctor said in a flat voice, like he was reading off a menu. They tested his family, his dad, his brother, even some distant cousin. No matches. He tried to be strong, but I could see him breaking. One night, I walked in and found him staring out the window with tears on his cheeks. He turned and said, "I'm going to die, aren't I?" And my heart shattered. "I'll get tested," I said without even thinking. His eyes widened. "No, you won't. Don't say that. That's too much." But he didn't mean it. His voice said no, but his eyes, they screamed please. So I did it. I sat through the blood tests, the medical questionnaires, the psych evaluation. Everyone kept reminding me of the risks, the complications, the recovery time, the fact that I'd be one kidney short for the rest of my life. But all I could think about was him, the way he used to make me laugh so hard I'd cry, the way he always pulled me closer in his sleep, the man who once stayed up all night with me when I had the flu, whispering dumb stories until I fell asleep. How could I not try to save him? Then the results came back. I was a match. A perfect one. I remember sitting across from him, holding the envelope in my hands, heart racing. He looked so tired, so fragile. When I told him, he cried, really cried. The kind of crying where your whole body trembles and you can't speak. He hugged me for so long I thought he'd never let go. "You're saving my life," he whispered. Everyone told me to slow down, my mom, my best friend Riley, even my boss at the cafe. "Are you sure?" they all asked. "It's a major surgery." Don't rush into this. But I wasn't rushing. Not in my heart. I loved him. And when you love someone, you don't count the cost. You just give. That was the day I decided to give away a part of myself. And I had no idea I was handing it to someone who would tear me apart in return. The weeks leading up to the surgery were a strange mix of fear, hope, and denial. I kept telling myself I was fine, that this was just a medical procedure, a heroic gesture I think people did for love. But late at night, when I was alone, doubts would creep in like shadows under a locked door. Was I doing this because I truly wanted to? Or because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't? Doctors explained every detail, the risks, the pain, the scar, the long recovery, the fact that I'd be more vulnerable for the rest of my life. You'll need to take extra care of your remaining kidney, one of them warned. No high-contact sports, no overuse of painkillers, and yearly checkups for the rest of your life. It sounded permanent, heavy. But every time I walked into that hospital room and saw Ethan, thinner, weaker, smiling just for me, I knew I couldn't back out. He never asked me to do it. That's what made it worse. He always said, "You don't have to, you know." But every time he said it, he'd hold my hand just a little tighter. Look at me just a little longer. And I could see it all written in his eyes. "Please, I don't want to die. You're my only chance." My mom cried the night before the operation. She made lasagna and tried to act normal, but by dessert, she broke down at the table. "You're my baby," she said. "You're cutting into your body for someone who might not even be in your life forever." I didn't answer, because somewhere deep inside, I had the same fear. What if things changed after this? What if I gave him this gift and he pulled away? But then I remembered his face that night he collapsed, the way I screamed his name, the helplessness. No, I have to do this. The morning of the surgery, I wore a hoodie and leggings. I didn't put on makeup. My hands were shaking. Ethan was in the next room being prepped too. I didn't see him until right before they wheeled us both in. They let us have 30 seconds together. He reached out, touched my face, and whispered, "You're the bravest person I've ever met. I'll never forget this. Never." I believed him. They gave me anesthesia, and the world slipped away. I woke up groggy, sore, nauseated, but alive. And so was he. The nurses told me the transplant was a success. Ethan was already stable, resting in recovery. They let me see him a day later, both of us propped up in our separate beds, a row of IVs between us. When our eyes met, he smiled. It wasn't his usual grin. It was softer, quieter, almost distant. Maybe it was the pain meds. Maybe I imagined it. He said, "You did it." And I said, "We did." The first few days were rough. I could barely walk to the bathroom alone. The incision on my side felt like it had been carved with fire. I was exhausted, weak, and emotional. But Ethan got stronger every day. By the end of the first week, he was sitting up and cracking jokes again. The color came back to his skin. He started walking laps around the floor. He had life in him again. Full of energy, full of plans. I remember thinking, this is what love looks like. But something small started to shift. He stopped visiting my room as often. Said the nurses were strict about rest. Sometimes he didn't answer my texts. That I heard a nurse say, "Your boyfriend is already flirting with the tech girls again." Typical. I laughed it off. Denial is a powerful thing. I had just given him part of my body. There was no way he'd betray that, right? Once we were both discharged from the hospital, everything was supposed to go back to normal or better than normal. He was healthy now. I had given him his second chance at life. We should have been closer than ever, but we weren't. At first, I chalked it up to stress. We were both healing. We were both tired. I tried not to take it personally when he didn't come to my follow-up appointment, even though I'd asked him to. "I'm wiped," he texted. "Rain check?" Rain check. For the girl who gave him a kidney. I laughed at my own bitterness. Told myself I was being dramatic. But it wasn't just that one time. The phone calls became shorter. The text slower. The warmth in his voice, dimmer. He still said he loved me, but it sounded like an obligation, like muscle memory. A few weeks later, I planned a small dinner at my apartment to celebrate our recovery. Just us. I spent all day cooking his favorite meal, pasta with too much garlic, chocolate lava cake for dessert. He showed up almost an hour late. No flowers, no card, no thank you. Just, "Sorry, I lost track of time." He barely touched the food. Spent most of the evening checking his phone, smiling at something I wasn't part of. I asked who he was texting. "Just people." When I pressed, he rolled his eyes. "Can you not right now? I'm tired." The same man who once made playlists for my morning walks now couldn't be bothered to look me in the eye. After he left, I stood in my kitchen for over an hour, staring at the untouched food. The cake had sunk in the middle, The candles burned down to puddles of wax. I cried. Not because of the evening, but because I finally admitted it to myself. He was pulling away. I told my best friend Riley everything. She was quiet for a long time, then finally said, "You know what this looks like, right?" I didn't want to answer, because I did know. It looked like someone who had gotten what they needed and was now ready to move on. But I wasn't ready to believe that. Not yet. I kept trying. I invited him out for walks. He canceled. I offered to bring over soup when he got the flu. He said he already had help. I made him a scrapbook of our hospital days, thinking it would be a sweet gesture, something to remind him of how far we'd come. He never even opened it. The final straw came 2 months post-surgery. I just finished a rough shift at work. My incision had been acting up. I was exhausted. As I walked home, I saw him across the street, standing outside a cafe with my sister, Emily. They were laughing. Close, too close. I froze. It wasn't the first time they'd spoken. They'd met at family gatherings, holidays, birthdays, but they were never that close. At least I thought they weren't. I watched as he touched her arm. She leaned into him. Then he tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. And she didn't pull away. Something in me cracked, not just pain, but fury and confusion, and the sickest, coldest kind of dread. I stepped out into the street, walked straight toward them. He saw me first. His face shifted in an instant guilt, panic calculation. "Hey," he said too casually, "this isn't what it looks like." The phrase every liar in history has said. Emily stared at the ground. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said, "You have got to be kidding me." And then I turned around and walked away, my knees shaking, my stitches aching, my chest hollow. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me like the hands of a clock that no longer meant anything. My phone lit up again and again. Ethan, Emily, Ethan again. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them standing there. Her hair in his fingers. That too familiar smile on his lips. The one I used to think was just for me. By morning, I felt like a ghost. At noon, someone knocked on my door. I didn't need to check. I already knew it was him. I opened it. Ethan stood there, hair messy, eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept either. He looked like he wanted to fall to his knees, like he practiced 100 apologies before showing up. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. I stepped aside. My voice was somewhere far away. "Sure. Why not? You already took everything else." He flinched. We sat on opposite sides of the couch like strangers negotiating a ceasefire. He reached for my hand. I pulled it back. "Okay," he said. "Okay. I deserve that." There was a long silence. Then he added, "I swear, I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't plan anything. Emily and we just talked a lot after the surgery. You were resting. I was scared. She was there. I never wanted to hurt you." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe how cliché it all sounded. "You never wanted to hurt me. Ethan, I gave you a kidney. Do you understand that? You were dying and I gave you a part of my body. And 2 months later, you're touching my sister like she's your lifeline now." He covered his face with both hands. I know. I messed up. I panicked. Everything changed. You changed. I changed. I didn't know how to be us anymore." "You didn't try," I snapped. Then I stood. "You disappeared. You toasted me while I was healing. You couldn't even say thank you without sounding bored. You owed me more than that. Even if your feelings changed, you owed me respect." Tears were already on my cheeks, hot and heavy. Was it happening while I was in the hospital? Be honest. He looked away. That was my answer. I felt like vomiting. "You were flirting with her while my body was in pieces because of you." "I didn't sleep with her," he said quickly. "Oh, congratulations," I said bitterly. A true gentleman. He stood too. "I came here to fix this, okay? To explain, not to get insulted." I stared at him, the man I once would have died for, and felt absolutely nothing but disgust. "You don't get to fix this," I said. "Because this isn't a fight. This is betrayal." He opened his mouth, but I didn't want to hear it. "Get out." He didn't move. I said, "Get out, Ethan." He hesitated like he still believed he could win me back with a sad look or a clever excuse. But then he realized I meant it. He walked out the door, and this time I didn't stop him. That night, Emily called. I didn't answer. She sent a message. "Please talk to me. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I love you. Please let me explain." I threw the phone across the room. She didn't deserve my anger yet, because the truth was, I still couldn't decide who I hated more. Her, or myself, because I saw it coming. I felt the distance, and I kept giving. kept sacrificing, kept hoping. Hoping that love, real love, was enough to hold it all together. But sometimes love isn't what keeps people loyal. Sometimes it's just what blinds us before they betray us. The days that followed were the quietest of my life. No phone calls, no visits, no footsteps in the hallway. Just me, my stitched up side, and the kind of silence that doesn't bring peace, only echoes. I stopped going to class. I ignored texts from Riley, from coworkers, from my mom. I deleted Ethan's number, blocked Emily, then unblocked, then blocked again. I couldn't decide what hurt more, the betrayal or the emptiness that followed it. People talk about heartbreak like it's one big moment, like it happens all at once in a dramatic explosion. But that's not how it was for me. Mine came in waves. It came when I opened the fridge and saw the juice Ethan used to drink every morning. It came when I reached for a hoodie and accidentally pulled out the one he left behind. It came when I sneezed and felt a sharp pain in my side. A reminder that part of me was gone and it wasn't coming back. I had given him a second chance at life. And now I was sitting here alone recovering from a surgery I'd volunteered for, trying to stitch myself back together in more ways than one. I tried journaling. I wrote a letter to Ethan I never sent, then another, then one to Emily. I ripped them all up. Riley finally came over unannounced one night. She let herself in with a spare key and found me lying on the couch in the same pajamas I'd been wearing for 3 days. "Okay," she said gently, "this has to stop." I blinked at her, disoriented. "What do you mean?" "I mean this," she said, gesturing around at the empty dishes, the pulled curtains, the air that smelled like grief. "You're not just sad, you're disappearing." "I am sad," I said. "I gave a kidney to someone who used it to walk away from me and into my sister's arms. What part of this shouldn't I be sad about?" Riley didn't flinch. She just sat beside me and took my hand. "I know. I'm not saying go be heartbroken. I'm saying don't let them take everything. You already gave him part of your body. Don't give him the rest of your life." I stared at her, and for the first time in days, something inside me flickered. Not quite strength, not yet, but the idea of it. That night, I sat in front of the mirror and looked at myself. Really looked. My face was pale, eyes hollow, shoulders slouched forward like I'd shrunk into myself. I lifted my shirt slightly to examine the scar, a curved, angry red line along my lower abdomen. It was healing. Slowly, but it would always be there. A part of me was missing, but I was still whole. Maybe not emotionally, not yet, but physically, I had survived. I did something selfless. I made a choice to save someone else, and even if he didn't deserve it, even if he threw it away, that didn't change who I was. It just revealed who he was. A few days later, I got a message from an unknown number, just one sentence. "You'll always be my hero." I knew it was Ethan. I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted the message without replying. Heroes aren't just people who save others. Sometimes they're the ones who survive being broken. Sometimes they're the ones who learn to walk again, not because anyone helps them, but because they decide they're done crawling. And maybe that's who I was now. Not his girlfriend, not Emily's sister, not a donor. Just me, raw, scared, but still here. And that was enough for now. 3 months after the surgery, I started running. It wasn't graceful, more like shuffling the purpose, but it was something. At first, I could barely manage 10 minutes without feeling like my lungs were going to collapse. My scar pulled every time I moved, but with every painful step, I imagined I was running from him. From the hospital bed, from the unanswered texts, from the night I saw him touching my sister's hair like it belonged to him. Each drop of sweat was a drop of him leaving my system. Riley started joining me. Sometimes we'd run in silence. Other times she'd make dumb jokes until I laughed so hard I had to stop. We called it emotional cardio. I started sleeping better, eating better, thinking better. And slowly, painfully, I started building a new version of myself. Not someone who needed a man to feel complete. Not someone whose worth was measured by how much pain she could endure. Not someone whose love made her small. I began volunteering at a local recovery center for kidney patients. I didn't tell them my story, not at first. I just showed up, passed out water, helped people into chairs. But one day I sat with a teenage girl waiting for dialysis. She was terrified. So I told her, "I've been there. I gave my kidney to someone. I was scared too, but you'll come out stronger, I promise." She squeezed my hand and smiled. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. Not for him. Not for what I did for him. But for myself. Because the act of giving, even if it was to the wrong person, had taught me exactly what I was capable of. Then one day I saw them. Ethan and Emily. I was in a bookstore picking up a new journal. I turned the corner, and there they were in the cafe section, sitting side by side, laughing like nothing had ever happened. He saw me first, his smile faded. Her face flushed instantly. I stood there for half a second, long enough to let them see me, really see me. I didn't cry, I didn't shake, I didn't even blink. I just nodded, one small, perfect nod. Then I turned around and walked away. It was the most powerful moment of my life. People say closure, it's a conversation. But sometimes, it's just silence, chosen on your own terms. I never spoke to either of them again. I didn't need to. I had nothing left to say to a man who used my body as a temporary fix and my heart as an afterthought. And Emily? She was no longer my sister in the way that mattered. Blood isn't loyalty, and betrayal is a kind of death you don't come back from. But me? I was alive. More alive than I'd ever been. I got a tattoo next to the scar, a small phoenix, rising from the place where I was cut open. People ask what it means. I just smile and say, rebirth. Because that's what this story really is. Not about a man who broke my heart. Not about a sister who forgot hers. But about a girl who gave everything and still had enough left to build a new life. I didn't lose a kidney. I lost a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. And I've never felt lighter.